Rise up, pick up your mat and walk. John chapter 5 and verse 8. These are words that Jesus speaks to an invalid. And this person has been in this condition for about 38 years. Interesting interaction between Jesus and this invalid person. And I like the words which Jesus says. Rise up. And I want to zoom in and zone in into this middle phrase. Pick up your mat and walk. The mat had a lot of representation, had a lot of meaning for this person. And I want to dwell on few aspects of what the mat was and what the mat meant to this person. The mat provided this person an identity. Because you see, he sat on that particular mat. And when people passed by and saw him sitting on the mat, they realized that this man was an invalid, and probably those who had pity threw a few coins for him as alms. This mat gave him an identity, and he embraced the identity that, that he was at the mercy of others. Instead of embracing the identity of who he was in God's eyes. And that is so true for you and me. We too have our own mats. The mats that we rest on. And these mats define our identity. An identity probably that has been pushed down on us by people around us. Commonly, we call this as labels. They probably said you're not good enough. They probably said you're not capable enough. They probably said you're not going to amount to too much in your life. And somehow, somewhere, those labels have become a reality to us. Sometimes these identities form because of experiences that we've gone through. Just because it didn't work out well in the past, we've continued to believe that this is my identity. Instead of aligning with the identity that God gives us, an identity which says that you are my son and you are my daughter. An identity which says that you have been formed in the image of God. An identity which says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. An identity which says that God has deposited and invested in us talents, gifts, and abilities. It's time for us to rise up and pick up the mat of wrong identity and embrace the identity which God has for us. A second representation of what the mat could have meant for this person was a mat of excuse. When Jesus asked him, do you want to be healed? A very straightforward question, which just required a yes or a no as an answer. But instead, this man proceeded to give an explanation. And the explanation went something like this. He said, I've been here for 38 years. And every time that pool is stirred, somebody else goes in before me. Which means I lost the opportunity to get healed when the pool got stirred. And therefore, I've resigned to fate and I'm going to rest on my mat. And you and me have these mats of excuses. And these mats of excuses could have been framed because of things not working out for us in the past. Mats of excuses, saying that I'm not good enough. Mats of excuses which says somebody else is better than me. Mats of excuses said I've tried and I've failed, right? But Jesus looks at you and me just like he looked at that man the other day. And he says, pick up your mat, rise up, pick up your mat and walk. It's time for you and me to rise up and pick up the mat of excuse, not let events of the past hold us hostage to a perfect present and bar us from entering into a wonderful future that God has in store for us. The third thing the mat represents is a mat of comfort. You see, this man was invalid, but when he sat on the mat, it probably provided him some kind of comfort. And therefore, he rested in that mat. And for me, I picked this up, right? Comfort, as good as it is, but it is a source of great limitation. Sometimes comfort limits us from becoming all that God wants us to be. Comfort limits us from living out our potential and pursuing after our purpose. And therefore, the words of Jesus to that man again is so relevant for us, which is rise up, pick up that mat of comfort and walk into the places and into the faces and into the seasons that I've prepared for you. I believe that's what Jesus says to us. Instead of resting on temporary comfort. And finally, what does that mat represent? Well, as this man sat on that mat, probably it gave him some temporary sustenance. And what do I mean by that? People who passed by saw him on that mat, like I told you a little while earlier, and probably threw him a few coins. And he said, as long as I sit on this mat, I'm going to get some alms. And we also remain in these mats for temporary sustenance instead of abandoning the mat and walking into the places that God has prepared for us, and walking into the place of goodness and mercy. Psalm 23. Goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life as I follow the shepherd, rather than sitting on a mat of comfort, sitting on that mat of temporary sustenance. If you want to experience the abundance of God, you need to surrender and abandon yourself to God. Instead of surrendering to a mat of temporary sustenance, if you can say, I'm okay to let go of this sustenance. The only thing that I've got, I'm willing to let go of it, because the moment I let go, I get access to walk into that place of abundance that God has stored for me, prepared for me. I love Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me in green pastures and beside still waters. There are green pastures that await for us. But before that, like the instruction that Jesus told that invalid man, He's telling you and me, rise up, pick up the mat and walk. I mean, you and me choose to take that risk or take that walk of faith and rise up from this place from the mat, which is a place of comfort, which is a place of false identity, which is a place of limitations, and which is a place of temporary sustenance. It's then we can walk into a place of providence, into a place of provision, into a place of plenty, which God has stored for you and me. God bless you, and thank you for watching Word in Brief. This is Rajiv signing off. But even before I go, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on this bell icon. God bless you.